I'd like to call the meeting to order. Melanie, if you could call the roll, please.
Commissioner Marquette?
Here.
Commissioner Duffy?
Present.
Commissioner Griffin is excused. Commissioner Stevens?
Here.
Commissioner Trezza?
Here.
Vice Chairman Sawyer?
Here.
Chairman Atwater?
Here.
You do have 6 commissioners present. It does constitute a quorum.
6 for 7. Good. Okay. Shall we now present the service awards?
Sure. So we have 4, only 1 staff member's here, so we'll do the picture after, if that's okay. The first one is Julie Anderhagen. She is the Finance Administrative Assistant 3. 5-year service, hired May 11th, 2020 as Administrative Assistant 1 and promoted to Administrative Assistant 2 on May 11th, 2022, and then promoted to her current position on July 20th, 2024. Shim Lacey is Administrative Services Senior Administrative Assistant, hired on April 6th, 2020 as Administrative Assistant 2, and promoted to her current position on August 8th, 2022. That's a 5-year service award. Dave Craddock, 10 years, Maritime Operations Warehouse and Terminal Superintendent, hired on June 1st, 2015 as Assistant Warehouse and Terminal Superintendent, promoted to his current position on January 1st, 2018. And the last one is a 10-year for Kara Pickering, Facilities Administrative Assistant 2, hired on April 3rd, 2014 as a temporary maintenance clerk, rehired as temporary admin clerk on July 1st, 2014, promoted to maintenance clerk 1 on April 22nd, 2015, promoted to administrative assistant 1 on January 25th, 2016, and then promoted to her current role on July 5th, 2021. So Shim is here.
Yes.
So we'll do a quick photo with everyone.
The big screen.
Can I have you move? Sir?
Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Okay.
Ready?
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. Are there any items on the calendar that need to be considered separately by the commission or the public? Okay. Do you have any questions related to the consent calendar items?
Public
Are
comments?
there any public comments with the consent calendar items?
No, just 4.
Okay,
So
no
moved.
comments? I'm asking for a motion and a second.
Second.
First and second by Duffy and Trezza. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Now we're going to talk about consideration possible approval of categorical exemptions 15301, 15302, 15304 pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA authorization for port staff to file a notice of exemption related thereto, authorization for port director to award contract for the East Complex Phase 1 sewer improvements project to Sirocco, Inc. for an amount not to exceed 1.157546.
Jason?
Good afternoon. Attached, or for your consideration today, are, as Chair mentioned, adopting a CEQA determination, or adopting a CEQA determination and authorizing an award of construction services for the Port's East Complex Phase 1 sewer improvement project. So what you see on the screen is representative of the port's sewer pipeline system. The sewer pipeline system primarily consists of just over 90,000 linear feet of pipeline and 2 lift stations. On the port's west complex, sewer is fed to the Stockton mains via a pump system, and on the east complex, it's gravity fed. The yellow lines that you see on the screen are existing, as well as the green lines. The green lines represent portions of the port sewer system that has been improved. In fiscal year 21-22, the port began to take a programmatic approach to our sewer system, primarily focusing on areas of our system that required frequent maintenance. Since fiscal year 21-22, we have improved approximately 21% of the port's sewer pipeline system, as well as improved one of our pump stations on the port's west complex. The project for consideration today is located on the port's east complex. The project limits are represented in red on the screen. So again, yellow is overall pipeline system on the east complex, and the red represents just under 2,000 lineal feet of sewer pipeline that we're proposing to be improved with this project. It includes installation of new pipeline, rehabilitation of existing pipeline, abandonment of some of the sewer pipeline, timeline and cost. So it'll take about 50 working days to complete. Engineer's estimate is just over $1 million, and the low bid we received is just over 1.1. From the procurement side, the RFP for construction services was posted on May 19. We had our pre-bid meeting on May 28, which included 13 contractors. On July 1st, the bids were due, and it resulted in the submission or the receipt of 3 bids. One from Preston Pipeline for $839,000, one from Sirocco and for just over 1.1 million, and one from Ranger Supplies for just under 1.5 million. After the bid opening, approximately 5 days, Preston Pipeline issued a letter to withdraw their bid for a mistake. They stated that they had an error in the bid, which was approximately worth $291,000. So the letter was issued in accordance with the public contract code, so the port accepted it. So what has resulted is that Sirocco is now the low bidder at just over $1.1 million.
Jason,
Yes.
do we do bid bonds? Do we ask for them to do bid bonds or no?
No, we do not.
Has Sirocco done prior sewer work for us?
Sirocco has done, yes, they have done a combination of sewer and several underground utility projects for the port. On the project financing side, so this project is identified as 22009 in our existing capital budget. It is included in our 2025 to 2030 capital budget. For this fiscal year, $1.2 million was allocated for the project. Staff recommendation is to adopt California Environmental Quality Act CEQA exemption pursuant to CEQA guidelines 15301, 15302, 15304, and authorize port staff to post a notice of exemption, as well as to authorize the port director to award the contract to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder as required by section 20751 of the Public California Contract Code to Sirocco in the amount of $1,057,546. Any questions?
Question?
Yes.
So the 1.2 million, is that for specifically, because you knew this was coming, or is it for all sewer improvements over the next 5 years?
No, it is just for this specific project. So again, East Complex, yellow represents existing, and red represents the project, this specific project limits.
So the engineering was done before budget, so we were able to budget for that 1.2.
So
Yes.
it's under a little bit. So
Yes,
it comes in under, that's good.
yes.
But what about the construction management? Sometimes that's listed there,
Yeah, so we had a recent board item, and we did put out an RFP for a construction management service for this project, and that was awarded to KSN. So,
How much
Yeah.
was that?
Do you remember the number?
I was curious if we still come under 1.2.
approximately 150, but I can provide some follow-up.
It's usually about 15%, what we've
I
seen.
can tell you if you want to know the amount.
No, but if it's 150, that's good. And we're still under.
So Dylan Murphy is the design
Yes, the
engineer.
total project is over budget.
1.5?
100.15 and
Comes-
another
oh, it comes to
150,
1.3.
So Dylan Murphy is the design engineer. KSN will be the construction management company, and then I'll go in well today. Sirocco will be our construction contractor.
Is there a separate budget item for the construction management? The 1.2 is only for construction, or do you know?
It is for the project as a whole.
So a little bit over then.
Yeah.
It was $140,760.
Thanks, Melanie.
God, they were like-
And this is part of a long-term project. Obviously, we're trying to do so much sewer a year in our capital budget to
Yes, and we will focus on the problem areas that we're aware of. and
problem
then-
areas first and, yeah. Anticipate finishing all the sewer lines, what, in the 2030s sometime?
Yes, yeah,
That's the original system.
original system.
Any other questions by the commission? Any questions from the public? Is there a motion to approve this item?
My motion.
Second.
Second by Sawyer. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Contract is adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, committee reports. Alan, you have any committee report items?
Unless there's a Grease committee report, I have nothing to add.
Mr. Duffy?
Not sitting on a committee right now, am I?
I don't think so,
First
no.
time in a long time.
We can change that if you want.
None.
None? Okay,
None.
okay. Okay, there we go. Port Director's comments.
I do have one retirement summary that I'll read here. After 22 years of dedicated service, the Port of Stockton announced the retirement of one of its long-term employees, Jill McAuliffe. Jill began her career at the port on September 6, 2003 as an accounting technician 1. After working a few years in accounting department, Jill transitioned to operations as an operations clerk 3 in April 2006. In January 2008, she promoted to maritime account supervisor and then to maritime accounts manager that same year. In November 2016, Jill returned to the maritime account supervisor role and remained in that position until her retirement on May 5th, 2025. The Port of Stockton has been fortunate to have such a dedicated employee as Jill, and the Port wishes her all the best in her retirement. She'll be greatly missed by all her colleagues. And then we also have a new hire. Sean, do you want to introduce Joe?
Sure. I'll let Joe do the introduction, but we made a strategic hire within the operations department to bring on a commercial manager, Joe Vazali, seated to my left. Joe brings decades of experience for stevedoring companies, marine surveying companies, and shipping lines, and so we're very lucky to have him. And Joe, I'll cede the floor to you.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Warm welcome from the staff, a lot of familiar faces, and happy to be on board. Thank you very much.
What's your title?
Commercial manager. So I started out in 1996 at the Maritime Academy. I worked about 15 years in liner shipping operations on the West Coast, including Port of Stockton. And then the last 10 years of my career have been in commercial management, business development, including Jacksonville, Florida, Gulf Coast, East Coast, building business and putting together asset-based port deals, and that's a little bit about me.
You living in Stockton?
No, I'm not. Roseville,
Okay.
a bit of a commute.
Yes, it is.
Can,
Yeah, we've known Joan for a while.
can you tell us,
No.
like, more about exactly what you're gonna be doing, because terminology kind of general.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
So, Joe will be doing some of what Pete does now, in terms of kind of transactional, sales support for the operations group. But, the commercial role eventually will encompass staff underneath Joe to support, not only sales, but business development, marketing, commercial planning, being more strategic about how we pursue business, sustain business, and grow it, on the operations side.
Okay, thank you.
That's great.
Good luck.
Anything else from the director?
No, sir.
Okay, any commission comments on anything?
I was wondering if we could get a presentation in the next 60 days on that source of funding from the big, the
Build
big
Back.
better, what is it?
Yeah.
Build
Back
Back Better?
We can, so Paul has been interacting with Will, who was the one on the video screen when we were sitting in the office. She has a meeting with him tomorrow. And then I have a meeting with them the following week, so we'll have a better idea. Our limitation is still gonna be which project do we put in front of them? But as far as the details of what we need to do, we'll have all that squared away by hopefully tomorrow.
Great.
And how much money will we have available?
Depends on
For
the
those
project.
projects?
Up to
Depends,
100 million.
Yeah,
yeah, and up to 100 years, it sounds like. So
100
it
years
depends on the
and
project. yeah.
Perfect money.
good.
We're still trying to get our handle around some of the
Okay.
rail infrastructure and things like that, where we need to go, and depending what happens with Stockton Soda, we'll make that decision for us.
And then you're traveling aren't you traveling soon to,
Tomorrow through Thursday, I'll be in DC with Alan and Anthony talking about shipbuilding and dredging, and then we're meeting with the Army to talk about Sharp.
okay. Good. See if you can
We'll
twist
see.
their arm, guys.
That's why I'm bringing them. there.
For
Okay.
what it's worth, we have a wood boat builder coming into Stevens' old building, but I don't think it'll work here. I have no other comment, but I'm glad we're researching that.
Okay, moving along. Are there any public comments on non-agenda items?
Yes.
Okay, on behalf of the Stockton Port,
One, actually, we have one.
Yeah, no, he's reading that.
yeah, on behalf of the Stockton Port Commissioners, may I take this opportunity to mention the commission welcomes any member of the public to speak during board meetings. Public comments should be directed to the chairman, that's me, and should be related items that fall within jurisdiction of the port. It is requested that speakers identify themselves by name, and please complete the comment form that is on the podium for that purpose. Also, each speaker will be given 3 minutes for comments. As a courtesy, after 2 minutes, you will be advised of your time. Thank you very much.
Greetings. The port staff has been notified that on 6/25/2025, the GSNR board voted to move forward without international export or storage of wood pallets at the Port of Stockton. At that meeting, I provided copies of the Residents for a Healthy Port and Delta Sierra Group letters for the record, both of which you've received. GSNR received over 5,000 comment letters in opposition to the proposed wood export project, and in looking these over and in reevaluating of actual costs associated with forestry wood pellet production and transport, decided that the possibility existed that they could be left with the stranded resource. Many organizations and community members have asked the port to agendize the proposed project to present our concern. The refusal of the Port Commission to listen to a presentation of community concerns until a firm project proposal was submitted to the Port of Stockton for consideration was a missed opportunity to build goodwill. The Port Commission will be considering other environmental documents for which they are acting as the lead CEQA agency. Please consider having an agenda item in advance of FEIR preparation and certification when staff can disclose through presentation the concerns of the community so that the lead CEQA agency, yourselves, can further direct staff in how to respond, particularly when asking the commission to make findings of overriding significance. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to close session at this time. In accordance with the Ralph M. Brown Act, an executive session will be conducted pursuant to Government Code 54956.8, 54956.9, and 54957.6. They're now closed.
In 1845, when Charles Weber acquired a 49,000-acre parcel from his luckless business partner in exchange for paying off his grocery bill, he couldn't have anticipated what awaited him 3 years later.
During the gold rush, Argonauts could come to Stockton en route to what were known as the Southern Mines. But the principal artery for transportation and the fastest way to travel was via water.
There was no Stockton in those early days. There was Charles Weber's tent town on the San Joaquin River that served as a jumping-off point for the gold fields.
He realized that the San Joaquin River was going to be the principal aid in developing his city, and Charles Weber was able to attract enough business people to establish hotels and restaurants and freight companies, and they would cater to the wants and needs of the miners. Those who did not make their fortune, in many instances, had been farmers in their previous lives. And coming back into Stockton or Sacramento, took a look around the Central Valley and realized there was great agricultural potential.
We're in San Joaquin County. This is the most productive agricultural area really in the world. You grow corn, wheat, almonds, walnuts, fruit, a whole host of different commodities feeding the world. You couldn't have the unique agricultural environment we have without the river. That is what allowed this state to turn from a gold mining state, if you will, to a food state.
California's Central Valley is blessed with the best soil there is. Back then, the problem was less about growing the food than it was getting it to market. Without a statewide railroad system or even decent roads, Stockton was in a strategic position to be a hub, connecting the valley by river to San Francisco.
From gold rush days, riverboats carried passengers and cargo on a daily basis between Stockton, Sacramento, and San Francisco.
With the Central Pacific Railroad's completion of a branch line in 1869, connecting Stockton with the Transcontinental Railroad, the city's vision as a trade and transportation hub began to materialize, except for one critical issue.
There were rather tortuous waterways leading from San Francisco to Stockton, weaving and turning through the islands. And because of hydraulic mining, there was a lot of sedimentation of these river areas, and so it was becoming rather shallow.
In addition, ships were getting larger with deeper drafts, leaving the river's shallow depth a barrier to ocean-going vessels. If the region was going to grow with the times, it had to tame the twisting passage through the delta. Even though no single individual gets credit for proposing a dredged shipping channel, it was Lieutenant Colonel Barton Stone Alexander who drew up the plan in 1870 that showed it was feasible.
They kind of choked at the projected $8 million price tag of such a ship canal. And so it continued to be a festering problem for the city of Stockton, being cut off from that ocean-going transportation.
Other countries hungered for California products, not just grains, nuts, and cotton, but manufactured goods too. The opportunity for trade was undeniable.
When a product moves and how it moves is all dependent on where the destination is. The ship behind me is actually loading rice that's going to Japan. Rice would not be able to get to Japan if it didn't use port facilities, because it doesn't make economic sense to ship the kind of tonnage that one ship can hold in another way, like, say, maybe in an aircraft.
Stockton's residents remained convinced their future lay in a navigable ship channel. So in 1925, they passed a $3 million bond toward its construction. The state and feds later added more funds that finally set the project in motion. Work began in 1930. Dredges began removing millions of cubic yards of river bottom. Clamshell dredges piled the mud and rock to make levees that formed the new channel, opening acres of delta islands for farmland. Despite the Great Depression and Hitler's rise in Germany, in Stockton, church bells rang and automobile horns blared. It was 1933, and more than 1,000 people celebrated the arrival of the Daisy Gray, the first deep draft vessel to arrive at Stockton's new port using the new channel. It was the start of a new era.
The local responsibility was to develop the facilities. So they developed the docks, the warehousing, the rail connection, many of which we're actually still using today. In my opinion, rail facilities are just as important to the success of a port as a dock.
Central California Traction Company has been in business for more than 100 years. We are a small railroad that basically does all the railroad switching on the Port of Stockton, and we're going all day long. We get rail cars from two major railroads, Burlington Northern and Union Pacific, and we get those cars, separate them all out, take them to the customers, let them unload them or load them, and then take them back and give them to those Class I railroads. The port is a busy place, and they've got ships coming in, they've got trucks coming in, and if we didn't have the railroad here, you wouldn't be able to get enough trucks in over the road infrastructure that they have.
When the United States mobilized to fight in World War II, Stockton's port facility became an integral part of the war effort. The United States Army took over the Port of Stockton, and it became the largest vehicle and parts consignment center in the entire United States. The harbor overflowed with 10,000 workers, loading merchant vessels and assembling as many as 125 ships for the war effort, from tugs to minesweepers.
In 1944, the United States Navy took over what was known as Rough and Ready Island and turned it into a naval complex. And the Navy held on to this area up until the year 2000, when Rough and Ready Island and all of its developments were turned over to the Port of Stockton.
Rough and Ready Island tripled the size of the port overnight. It added warehousing and open land that the Port of Stockton never had before. The acquisition really helped us to be able to provide additional space for tenants to develop their own projects.
Yara North America chose this location for its central location in the valley. We were able to lease a piece of the land here and build this facility and move our operation from another location that was less profitable and less convenient, so to speak. Keeps us competitive, keeps our costs down, and keeps us profitable, which is really what we're all about.
The presence of global companies reflects the port's role in world commerce. Cargo crossing the docks has grown 176% in less than 10 years, making the Port of Stockton the fourth busiest port in California.
I've seen the port get extremely busy. I was working when there would be maybe one ship every 2-3 weeks. Now we have 2-3 ships every day coming in. It's just booming.
While the port is responsive to world markets and international trade trends, it's also tied to the local community with a responsibility to its neighbors.
Today, the port supports more than 10,000 jobs, what I like to call family wage jobs, to become a major part of the economic foundation of Stockton and the greater San Joaquin County area. The port actually makes a major contribution through tax revenues that go into every facet of every service that's provided by the city of Stockton or San Joaquin County.
The port absolutely is part of the community. The waterway is not just only our ship channel. It is part of the Delta, it is part of the Pacific Flyway, it is a recreation area, it is a fishery. One of the latest commitments the port has made is we have joined the Green Marine program. It looks at how ports and how maritime operations are being handled to reduce your impacts on the environment. At Antioch Dunes National Wildlife Refuge, we are working to restore the habitat for 3 species by placing sand material that comes out of our dredging each year. It's been an extremely successful project. The owls were here when we took over Rough and Ready. You know, the rodents like the burrow holes in our levees, and we use the owls, the Air Force, if you want to call them, to come in and reduce the rodent population. This wonderful group, Puentes, came to us, and they wanted to develop a community garden. And we thought it was a wonderful idea.
We belong to a church in Sacramento, and a lot of the people are elderly and are really in need. So we thought once we start harvesting, we'll go and bless people so that way the people that can't get out, they'll have their fresh veggies delivered right to them. The power of one little seed to help people live more sustainable lives. Yeah, that's our goal.
It could be asked, what's a maritime port got to do with community gardening, or saving endangered species, or running a tiny service railroad, or any of a host of novel undertakings? It's being innovative, it's being responsive, it's being unique. But then, a bustling port 75 miles inland from the coast is unique. That's the Port of Stockton, cast in a different mold from its start as a gold rush depot upriver, doing what's needed to meet the challenges of its times, the responsibilities as a community leader, and embracing the prospects for a bright future.
Back in 2006, we started building and installing barn owl nest boxes to enhance the barn owl population here at the port.
We put cameras in the boxes, put the images up on our website. I think we had 40,000 hits on our website just on the owls in 1 month last year.
The public went absolutely crazy for it. We would post regular updates on the port's Facebook page, and we got many, many, many responses, lots of interested viewers. Absolutely beautiful animals. They've got a big white disc of their face that actually helps channel light and sound. So when they're out hunting at night, they are able to locate their prey. The islands here are all surrounded by levees. To maintain the integrity of those levees, it's pretty important that you keep rodents from burrowing and digging holes. These owls can eat up to 3,000 rodents in a single breeding season. So they're quite an effective method of rodent control. To our knowledge, we have increased the population quite a bit. This particular box behind me last year housed 7 owlets. They all survived to fledging, which is somewhat rare. A typical brood is more in the neighborhood of 4 or 5, but we have 16 of these boxes at the port, and so you do the math, there's a significant number of owlets being reared. I guess it's like the Field of Dreams. Build it and they will come, because they were here in short order, and this particular box has been in use every year since 2006.
The point of the OwlBox program is to reduce pesticide use, protect our levees, and in the meantime, now we've got a great project we can also share with the public that creates interaction.
The port wants to do everything they can to enhance the environment and support local wildlife.
In 1845, when Charles Weber acquired a 49,000-acre parcel from his luckless business partner in exchange for paying off his grocery bill, he couldn't have anticipated what awaited him 3 years later.
During the gold rush, Argonauts could come to Stockton en route to what were known as the southern mines. But the principal artery for transportation and the fastest way to travel was via water.
There was no Stockton in those early days. There was Charles Weber's tent town on the San Joaquin River that served as a jumping-off point for the gold fields.
He realized that the San Joaquin River was going to be the principal aid in developing his city, and Charles Weber was able to attract enough business people to establish hotels and restaurants and freight companies, and they would cater to the wants and needs of the miners. Those who did not make their fortune, in many instances, had been farmers in their previous lives. And coming back into Stockton or Sacramento, took a look around the Central Valley and realized there was great agricultural potential.
We're in San Joaquin County. This is the most productive agricultural area really in the world. You grow corn, wheat, almonds, walnuts, fruit, a whole host of different commodities feeding the world. You couldn't have the unique agricultural environment we have without the river. That is what allowed this state to turn from a gold mining state, if you will, to a food state.
California's Central Valley is blessed with the best soil there is. Back then, the problem was less about growing the food than it was getting it to market. Without a statewide railroad system or even decent roads, Stockton was in a strategic position to be a hub, connecting the valley by river to San Francisco.
From gold rush days, riverboats carried passengers and cargo on a daily basis between Stockton, Sacramento, and San Francisco.
With the Central Pacific Railroad's completion of a branch line in 1869, connecting Stockton with the Transcontinental Railroad, the city's vision as a trade and transportation hub began to materialize, except for one critical issue.
There were rather tortuous waterways leading from San Francisco to Stockton, weaving and turning through the islands. And because of hydraulic mining, there was a lot of sedimentation of these river areas, and so it was becoming rather shallow.
In addition, ships were getting larger with deeper drafts, leaving the river's shallow depth a barrier to ocean-going vessels. If the region was going to grow with the times, it had to tame the twisting passage through the delta. Even though no single individual gets credit for proposing a dredged shipping channel, it was Lieutenant Colonel Barton Stone Alexander who drew up the plan in 1870 that showed it was feasible.
They kind of choked at the projected $8 million price tag of such a ship canal. And so it continued to be a festering problem for the city of Stockton, being cut off from that ocean-going transportation.
Other countries hungered for California products, not just grains, nuts, and cotton, but manufactured goods too. The opportunity for trade was undeniable.
When a product moves and how it moves is all dependent on where the destination is. The ship behind me is actually loading rice that's going to Japan. Rice would not be able to get to Japan if it didn't use port facilities, because it doesn't make economic sense to ship the kind of tonnage that one ship can hold in another way, like say maybe in an aircraft.
Stockton's residents remained convinced their future lay in a navigable ship channel. So in 1925, they passed a $3 million bond toward its construction. The state and feds later added more funds that finally set the project in motion. Work began in 1930. Dredges began removing millions of cubic yards of river bottom. Clamshell dredges piled the mud and rock to make levees that formed the new channel, opening acres of delta islands for farmland. Despite the Great Depression and Hitler's rise in Germany, in Stockton, church bells rang and automobile horns blared. It was 1933, and more than 1,000 people celebrated the arrival of the Daisy Gray, the first deep draft vessel to arrive at Stockton's new port using the new channel. It was the start of a new era.
Okay. Microphone's on. Coming out of closed session. The Port Commission took no formal reportable action during the closed session. We're moving on to item 12 on the agenda, which we just heard, right? Okay. So, consideration of possible approval memorandum of agreement between the International Longshoremen's Union, Local 6, and Stockton Port District. Do the commissioners have any other questions? Are there any public comments on agenda item number 12? There being none, I'm seeking a motion to approve the agreement.
So moved, sir.
Duffy moves. Trezza seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There being none, that is approved. Okay, item 13 on the agenda. Steve, you've already kind of given us some insight on that.
I would just say from a procedural standpoint, to be efficient, I think it could all be done in one motion, where you move to rescind approval of the neg deck and CEQA findings. You move to rescind the approval of the lease, and you adopt ordinance number 264, and that could all be done in one motion.
Okay, great. So will anyone make that motion?
I will.
You should ask if there's any public comment.
Okay. Any public comments?
Mary Elizabeth. For over 2 years, committee members have stated that a full environmental impact analysis was needed after reviewing the initial mitigated negative declaration for the production of hydrogen from methane, and after reviewing the recirculated mitigated negative declaration. Now, after having sought legal representation for the Delta Sierra Group of the Sierra Club, Earth Justice, and the Center for Biological Diversity's legal representation, the Port Commission will consider the staff's recommendation to non-certify CEQA documentation and rescind the lease agreement with Bayotech for 10 years. Community members continued to bring up this project and our concerns to the Port Commission, as we did for the GSNR wood export project. Please consider having an agenda item in advance of final environmental document preparation and certification, when staff can disclose through presentation the concerns of the community, so that the Stockton Port Commission, as the lead CEQA agency, can further direct staff in how to respond, particularly when asking the Commission to make findings of overriding significance. The historic practices of the Port Commission only as recently as 5 years ago, when the New Star FEIR was certified without releasing the report to community members that submitted DEIR comments, speaks to a disregard of the impacts that proposed and actual port operations have on the surrounding community. Efforts have been made to foster better relations and trust, but the GSNR and Bayotech responses speak otherwise. Sincerely, thank you.
Any other public comments? There being none, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Who was the second? I didn't see it.
Trezza.
Okay, thank you.
That's it. Meeting is adjourned, sorry.